So I wanted to look at a particular way we have of thinking as human beings. And in my own journey, it really was overcoming these three ways of thinking that took the time. So if you can examine those briefly, and hopefully this will, if you take this in, it'll shortcut that pathway to awakening. So first of all, when I came to this journey, I'd heard that there was something real about me that was invisible and intangible. And I would hear teachers say things like, it's all around you right now. It's everywhere you look, and all of that. And it was very frustrating because I couldn't seem to find it. You know, since that point later, I came to understand that I could access it through a sense of silence, a sense of stillness, consciousness, the awareness that is looking at everything. But the reason it took me so long was because this first thought that was very well believed, and it is in all of humanity, and that is that what we can see and experience with our senses, what we can hear, all of that, what we can touch, is more real than what we can't experience. And so forms are more real, and they have priority over something that is formless. And even my belief, my deep-seated belief, was that something that is invisible and intangible equaled dead. You know, so I was either here as a form or I didn't exist at all. And that the invisible and intangible wasn't real, that it didn't have any particular importance to it. And if we look at humanity in general, we can see that sort of idea prevalent. Even when we go looking for God, we look for a person, an entity, someone that lives, you know, up in the sky, some guy, some personified version of that. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because with this idea in play, it's very hard to keep bringing attention to that which is invisible and formless: silence, stillness, presence, beingness, consciousness. If our undercutting belief is that the formless silence is less valuable, less important than the things that we're seeing and the forms that we're experiencing and all of that. So at the second point, when I began to see that, I began to move beyond that, to realize actually the formless might be, and here comes a second way of thinking that we get stuck on. The formless might be more important than the forms. So we go through this stage of neti. I'm not this body, I'm not these thoughts, I'm not these emotions, I'm not the things I see in my life. I'm formless, invisible, silence, and that's the most important thing. And all of this manifestation is kind of just something that's happening. It's nothing to do with me. And of course, that's a valuable place to hang out in our awakening for some time, but it isn't going to be, it's not going to allow us to see the fullness of reality. So we flipped from believing forms are the most important here, and that formless is irrelevant, to the other way around. Formless is most important, and form is almost irrelevant and doesn't matter, and temporary and transient and all of that. So the willingness to make that shift took me a long time in my thought process. And when I began to do this, it became easy to put attention on the silence, to sit in meditation, because I was valuing that more than the thoughts that were going on in my during my meditation and all of that. And then that felt good for a while, and I got very good at meditation, and still my life was kind of screwed up though in the rest of it. And this led to this third and final kind of way of seeing, which again took a big readjustment. But what took the time in that was really this idea that there's this resistance to seeing it. So the third idea is that form and formless are the same thing, the same one being, that the invisible consciousness, presence, silence is so powerful that it can show up either as nothing at all or as everything. But they are not inherently two, they are one. Even to say they assumes plural, but what can you do in language? That there's only one thing and it can show up as form or formlessness. And at each stage along this way, it took me a while to work up the willingness to shift how I think about reality. I thought I knew what reality was. It's this physical world I could see. And then I was sure it was only this invisible world that I couldn't see. And then eventually I had to admit it's both. And at both, the idea of both falls away. Their duality ends there. It still seems to be, but... And the reason I'm saying this is so that if you are finding that you're stuck at any point of suffering, it could be because you put more willingness into, do I need to change the way I'm thinking about myself, about reality here? And what happens when I do that? Does it have to be a long drawn out process where I suffer and then finally come to some recognition that my thoughts need to change? Or can I preemptively look at where my thinking is static and look at how I can come to change that? So this was a major shortcut to awakening for me, major, when I got this. It's not really the things that I'm thinking about. It's my willingness to change those ideas. And in awakening, the next stage of our awakening deepening quite often includes a total 180-degree shift in how we're thinking, especially for those first two stages, for want of a better word. There aren't really any stages, and as human beings, we're conditioned, programmed to find out the right thing to believe in, to think, the right way to think, and hold on to that with everything that we've got. And that's going to trip us up in our awakening. So can you re-examine where you're holding on to something that seemed very true at one point and now needs to be challenged and even let go of? And in fact, the exact opposite may be true than what we believed.